Alright, this is Clint Halsey, and this is going to be my first recording. I'm going to try to post this on YouTube, and we're going to see how this goes. If you have any suggestions or comments or critiques, please tell me. This is on YouTube. Just comment on YouTube. Please, be constructive though. I mean, don't say, "Oh, you're a socialist pig" or something like that. Be helpful. Critique me where you disagree with me. Critique me where I need to improve, but let's keep it civil, right? So I wanted to talk about the Tunisian and Egyptian revolutions. And first thing to note is that the media has done a relatively poor job of covering, besides a few, such as Shep Smith of Fox News, which is super surprising and amusing. Sam Cedar in the Majority Report, that's his show. They do a little radio show and a podcast, and also Democracy Now, who's on the web, also on the radio. And they, of course, do a good job covering everything, but especially international news. There was, of course, the group Anonymous is famous for hacking websites like MasterCard and PayPal because they didn't support WikiLeaks, and Anonymous supports WikiLeaks. Well, Anonymous is, of course, all over Twitter. And a funny Anonymous tweet this week was, "No news about Egypt from mainstream media agencies. What a shame, what a shame." And then there's a space and it says, "So I heard Britney Spears is getting a vaginal tattoo." So, there's the priorities in our media are so screwed up. The things, we're not covering revolutions, but we're covering small entertainment news that doesn't really matter. CNN actually finally started covering it, I saw. And Maddow and O'Donnell have now jumped on the wagon, as now that this is finally national news. I don't watch all the news outlets and shows, so maybe there's more. I just can't keep up with all of it. But it is, of course, the corporations who control what is on TV. RT America just did a good story on this, but they showed how, like General Electric owns MSNBC and NBC, and they control what is said on those networks. And of course, Rupert Murdoch owns Fox News and the Wall Street Journal. There are some exceptions, as saw Cenk Uygur, who's just gotten a show with the booting of Keith Olbermann from Countdown, and Rachel Maddow. They've both made points about the power and corruptness of GE, of course, who owns the very network they work for. They pointed out how they're cheating the tax code, how much money they're making, and stuff like that, which I think is fantastic. Mediate has even said, Mediate, of course, the internet agency kind of watches media. I think it was founded by Dan Abrams, who used to work for MSNBC. But Mediate has even said, "Cable news drops routine, gives Egypt the front burner treatment." That was one of their headlines. Mediate also pointed out that America is only so worried about Egypt because of the large oil deposits. There was less coverage of the Tanzania revolution because there's no oil there. I mean, Obama said something about it in his speech, but you don't hear a lot about that because, and especially in the mainstream media or the government, because there's no interest there. There's no oil there. But Egypt, on the other hand, has lots of oil. So Egyptian's leader has just told the cabinet, I think today or yesterday, to step down, but he won't step down himself. So he basically fired the government and stepped himself. He said he will appoint the new government, which is kind of laughable, and it shows the people have a point when they complain that they're not part of the democracy. And what's interesting is the U.S. pays for the very weapons Egypt is now using on its citizens. We're seeing basically made in USA, or made by USA companies. Very weapons, the grenades and the guns and stuff that are killing the citizens. Now they're firing sniper rifles at protesters from live bullets and killing them. And it's interesting because wasn't Saddam Hussein gassing the Kurds, and wasn't that the reason we invaded Iraq, or one of the many reasons that the Bush and Blair administrations tried to put forth? Also, it's interesting to look at Michael Moore, the filmmaker. He tweeted. Of course, the word tweeted is silly and it's fun to laugh at, but what other word are you going to use? He said, "This is what it looks like when Americans don't invade," referring to Egypt and Tunisia versus Iraq and Afghanistan. Jon Stewart asked, "If all we need for democracy is Twitter and Facebook, then why did we invade Iraq?" Because the Tunisia revolution especially has been called the Twitter revolution or the Facebook revolution. They're gathering on social network sites, and that's how they're coordinating their protests and everything. One Daily Show correspondent mused, of course the Daily Show is Jon Stewart's show, this is all credit to President Bush, because they knew if they didn't start democracy, America was going to do it for them. Of course, we did not install democracy in governments. We overthrew before Bush in countries such as Chile. So, we did this before Bush. And, of course, during Bush, countries like Afghanistan and Iraq, and these countries don't have democracy. They're ruled by military rule. Afghanistan is ruled by Karzai, who's basically a puppet, and pretty tyrannical and corrupt. So it's hard to call these democracies. Anonymous, again, an anonymous organization, pointing out an inconsistency in Joe Biden, the vice president, when he called Assange a few weeks ago a high-tech terrorist, and then coming out this week and saying he supported Egypt's government. Perhaps this is not so much an inconsistency as a commitment to oppressive government. As we see, the United States, they donate $1.5 billion to Egypt. So if you pay taxes, part of that's going to Egypt's government, the very government that's corrupt and the people want to overthrow. Kentucky Congressman Rand Paul, who's a Republican and kind of Tea Party supporter, wants to cut all foreign aid, and that's kind of what he's proposed to do earlier this week. Well, this is, of course, silly when you're referring to the deficit. It plays a very small role in the deficit, and heartless when thinking about countries that need real aid. This is a good thing when we're talking about countries like Egypt and Israel. It's basically we fund Israel's military. We give $1.5 billion to Egypt, Egypt's corrupt government. So I guess if we did cut all foreign aid, at least in this part, it would be a good thing. So we've seen protests in Egypt. They started nonviolent, but they appear to have gotten violent. The Tunisia, protests seem to have been nonviolent. Me personally, I'm for nonviolent revolutions. I think we can change the culture, like Tolstoy, writer of War and Peace, Gandhi, and Dr. Martin Luther King, without resorting to violence. There were protests in England and France that ended up getting violent over raising tuition prices and raising retirement age. This was a few months ago. While RT America, again the media organization, pointed out that America had it worse and yet did nothing. American students' tuition is higher, the retirement age is higher, and there's been recent talk in both the White House and legislative branches the retirement age may be raised, despite what many economics say about this issue because they think it should be lowered. So, and will the students revolt then? The reason students revolt, when you have a higher retirement age, there's more people still in the workforce, and it's harder for you to find a job. Rather than if there's a lower retirement age, people are retiring and there's more jobs open. And this is why many economics argue for lowering it and not raising it, like the Obama administration evidently wants to. The Chinese, by that I mean the Chinese government, are blocking all searches for Egypt on the internet. So I guess if you type in Egypt, you can't type in Egypt in Google or whatever, and it says, oh, sorry, it's blocked. So all the people of China can't see or read about the revolution there, which, of course, kind of, in my opinion, really hurts the thesis that the Chinese are somehow communists. And now it appears that there are protests erupting in Jordan. People are seeing, hey, maybe these revolutions work, these protests and everything. Chris Hayes, who writes for The Nation and sometimes substitutes for Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, said, how nervous is the Saudi royal family now with the recent revolutions going on. And so here in America, which is where I live, we're in a broken, corrupt system as well. It's time to raise up like the Tunisian and Egyptian people and change our system. Not just voting, as the anarchist Proud, who was against voting as he saw it contradictory with anarchism. And while voting for one of the major parties are pointless, I sort of disagree, as I think that Americans should support third parties that are not getting money from the corporations, such as the Green Party or the Peace and Freedom Party. But to say that voting is the only political action that needs to be done, I think is rather ridiculous. Simply voting will not change our current system. We don't live in a democracy. The people's interests are not representative. This isn't a left or right issue, a liberal or conservative issue. As most outside of the establishment can see this. You ask the Tea Partiers, they say, yeah, our government's corrupt. You ask the lefties, and they say, well, yeah, our government doesn't work for the American people. As Dylan Radigan would say. The interest of a few is represented in our government. The interest of the rich and powerful. These are the ones who buy the politicians. The big corporations that fund the campaigns. And it's not ideology that makes a Republican or a Democrat vote the way they do. It's who's funding them. Maybe, there are some exceptions, but for the most part, this is how our system works. In Tunisia, they overthrew the government but installed a new one that had many of the members of the old party still in it. And I think this is a good lesson for us. I mean, while it's obviously too early to tell whether the people actually brought real change, it doesn't take an overly cynical person to say that they didn't. You can't simply change the people. You have to change the incentive structure and the system. And this is one reason I'm against violent revolutions. Violent revolutions, all they do is they kill the people or hurt the people that are in power, that are in the system. And it's not necessarily the people that are bad, it's the system that is bad. And you have to change the system, not the people. So whether you vote for Obama or Bush, doesn't really matter if you didn't change the system. So what we can do, we can change the system. We just have to figure out how. So thank you for listening. If you listen to all of this, please comment. If this is on YouTube, comment or like or subscribe or dislike if you didn't like it. Just tell me what you liked and didn't like about this. And I'm out.